What is the difference between a jiu-jitsu hobbyist and a jiu-jitsu competitor? With all of the big events just finishing up not very long ago, I had my own students asking me this very question. And I even had people in the comments who have asked me this before. What makes me a hobbyist? What makes me a competitor? How do I go from a hobbyist to a competitor? We're going to talk about it in more detail right now. If you are new here, thank you for checking out the channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Also, make sure you hit the bell icon. That way you're notified whenever the latest video comes out. Let's start off by defining what a jiu-jitsu hobbyist is and what a jiu-jitsu competitor is. And then we will actually talk about the middle ground between each two. A jiu-jitsu hobbyist is essentially someone who is training mainly for internal benefits of jiu-jitsu. So let's expand on that a little bit more. Internal benefits would be the idea of training for fun, for fitness, for family, for self-development and self-improvement. Basically, the tournaments or competition is no way going to affect if you continue to train jiu-jitsu or not. You are not bothered by if you win a match. You're not trying to chase gold medals. You're not trying to become a world champion. You're not trying to make money from the competition. You have really no real goals in the competition setting. When you're a hobbyist, you're basically training jiu-jitsu mainly for yourself and mainly for development and a lot of those internal beliefs. On the other end of the spectrum, when we have the competitor, right, I would say this is someone who is trying to train for the glory. They're trying to train for legacy, maybe for medal count. Maybe they have aspirations to become the best in the world one day, or they want to open up an academy. They think winning the gold medals is really going to help them do that. They're just trying to push themselves in a more sportive aspect of jiu-jitsu. But that is really why they are showing up for training jiu-jitsu. They are showing up to train eventually for those aspects to test themselves in the performance. Those are the two big differences between a hobbyist and a competitor. Now, in between, we have two other kind of archetypes or categories. Under the hobbyist, right, we have the general hobbyist, but then we also have what I would call the hobbyist competitor or enthusiast competitor. This is someone who is mainly still a hobbyist, but they use competition as a tool to test themselves and test that internal validation. For example, we are all training in the gym and we're training to improve and we want to get better or want to self-develop. But when we are training with all of our training partners who are the same, they know my moves, sometimes I want to go out there and test it against somebody who has completely different moves, who's never seen my game, or I want to experience somebody else's game and see if I can shut it down. What you're doing is you're using the competition more as a tool for that development aspect, but you have no real care about acquiring millions of medals or glory from that. Now, you still might want to win. I mean, if you're going to enter something, you probably still want to do well, but at the end of the day, you don't really care that much. You maybe compete 4 times a year, maybe once a quarter per se. You might even only compete twice a year. You're basically just seeing what it's like to go out there and compete, essentially. And then on the competition side, we have that professional, that's the guy that you're seeing on all the tournaments that you saw this weekend. They are the professionals. They are training full time, and that is their main bread and butter. Just kind of a notch before that, I would say, is that you have your semi-pro. I don't mean that in a despairing way. I just mean that this person has goals and aspirations to become a professional one day. They are most of the time maybe a blue belt at the very earliest, maybe a purple belt, and they really have shown potential in competition, that if they really stay after it, they have a talent and they have a knack, and they could become a pro one day. If they put in the work and they put in the effort and they dedicate the time, then they can maybe make that next jump or next leap. Now, usually the semi-pro also probably is either in school or they have a job, but all of those things are just there to support their jiu-jitsu habit, more or less. They don't really have a career outside of jiu-jitsu. They're working on making jiu-jitsu their career as an athlete in jiu-jitsu. Just to recap, we have the two main categories of hobbyist and then competitor. Then we also have your hobbyist competitor. And then on the competitive side, we have your semi-pro, and then we have your professional blue chip. Let me know down in the comments below, what category do you think you are? Do you think you're a hobbyist competitor? Are you a semi-pro? Is your goal to become one or the other? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, let's talk about how that progression rate happens. The first day that you walk into jiu-jitsu, you start off as a hobbyist. Even if you're a D1 wrestler and you have all this potential one day, everyone who walks in day one is a hobbyist because you're still learning the sport. You're still learning what everything is, and you're still learning how to execute in that world. And then eventually you progress into a competitor hobbyist, where you're maybe doing a tournament every now and then, and you're doing it at lower levels, and you're just trying to see what it's like. After you probably maybe become a blue belt, maybe become a purple belt, you've done enough of those competitions to say, hey, I feel like I have really good potential to become a pro one day. You've shown that light. Now you morph into more of that semi-pro. And the semi-pro is now the person who is definitely doing a tournament at least once a quarter, probably even more frequently than that. And they are training at a much higher volume rate. They are also dialed in a lot more on what they are trying to do and what they're trying to develop. Now they're starting to take care of their diet. They're starting to weight train. Everything that they're doing now is to prepare to best optimize their performance against higher skilled individuals versus like the hobbyist over here, who's like a hobbyist competitor. Yeah, they might diet good for a little bit of time and they might prepare a couple weeks ahead of time, but that's not the majority of their training. They're just doing it for the event coming up, and then they go back to being a hobbyist once it's over. The semi-pro is not. Everything that they're doing is really trying to become a professional. Every competition they take super seriously. They're really trying to impose their will. They're really trying to dominate, and they're getting used to doing game plans in this way. Once you become high enough level and you become brown or black belt level, most likely, then you're able to become a professional. And the reason why I say brown or black belt when you become a professional is because you don't want to be the world's best purple belt. Like, that's cool if you are, not to take anything away from you, but if you're trying to be a professional, you want to be the best in the best league. You don't want to say, oh man, I played in the G League of the NBA and I won all the MVPs there, but I never got to play in the NBA. Like, cool, you did something good against other people who were kind of good, but you didn't do it against the real elite guys. And that's what everyone remembers when you talk about professionalism and legacy, right? You do it against the best people. That's those four archetypes and the phases and how you can progress from one to the next. Now, one thing I want to talk about too is, do you have to do this path? I think there is a common misunderstanding in a lot of jiu-jitsu world that if you are a hobbyist and you never branch out of becoming a hobbyist, you never become a hobbyist competitor. And then once you become a hobbyist competitor, if you don't go to semi-pro, now for some reason look down upon the other people who just never progress to that next phase. And a lot of that is due to personal choice. You made a personal choice to go that route, to dedicate your life in that way, and I decided not to. Now, there are some obviously factors that could contribute to that. My age, my family, everything else that starts to happen with that. Those are all reasons why I might make the choice to do one versus the other. But in my opinion, I don't know why we tend to separate ourselves and we draw a line and say, well, if I'm on this side of the competitor and I'm on this side of the hobbyist, we have to fight each other and look down on each other and talk shit on each other. The guys who are the semi-pros are the ones that probably give everyone else the hardest time, in my opinion. They are maybe a really good purple belt, and they can tap out like a brown belt who's a hobbyist. And so now they're like, I don't even know why I'm training with this guy. He's a hobbyist brown belt. He doesn't deserve to be a brown belt. I don't really understand that, because jiu-jitsu is growing and there needs to be good people. And what I mean by good is not just good technique, but good, supportive, and positive people on both sides to bring people up. And so if you're the separation and you're looking down on these other people who are not in that same category as you, you're going to end up driving people away or creating isolation. And to say that the hobbyist competitor or the hobbyists don't have value to give to newer students is absolutely ridiculous. If I'm a hobbyist brown belt, I can teach another hobbyist white belt. There is nowhere in the world that says I cannot provide value. Just because they're maybe not as good in the performance or in the technical or the under pressure aspect does not invalidate a hobbyist. And the reality is, those guys who are the hobbyists and the hobbyist competitors, they're going to be paying your bills. They're going to be the ones buying your instructionals. They're going to be the ones buying tickets to your events. So be freaking nice to them. Bring them up with you. Make them feel like you're part of the team. Don't isolate them and talk shit on them. I don't understand that, but it's kind of like a club. You might need to go to a school that can push you more and something like that. And that's totally fine, but that's not these guys' fault that are over here. If you're a hobbyist and you're trying to compare yourself to the purple belt phenom that is over here tapping everybody else out who's really good, stop comparing yourself to them. They're in a different category, right? They've moved up a whole notch and a whole click. You trying to catch them is really just a waste of effort and a waste of time on your part. You still need to be focusing on your own development aspect. That's going to wrap up the end of this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you are interested in how to improve yourself as a hobbyist or as a competitor, or you're wanting to learn how to work through those steps more or what you should be doing at each one, you can join my coaching program. There's a link down below where you can schedule a time and we can talk and I can make sure we're a good fit with each other and I can actually help you accomplish your goals. So if you're interested in that, make sure you book a call right now and then make sure you check out this next video that's going to pop up right here. And I'll see you guys in the next one.